Greetings, race fans, and welcome to Wheel Insights, where we bring you inspirational stories from the world of motorsport, both on track and sim racing. I'm Webbo, a professional motorsport commentator. Very pleased to welcome the first reigning champion we've had here on Wheel Insights and multiple Miata Trophy race winner as well. Greetings and a very warm welcome to you, John Langridge.
Thank you, Mr. Webbo. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome. It is fantastic to get the chance to have a chat with you. We've had a few chats across the paddock at various racetracks around the UK, and I'm really keen to get chatting all about your experience in the Miata Trophy. But let's start traditionally. Talk to me about your earliest racing memory. What gave you the bug?
Oh, yeah. Going back a bit. So my actual earliest memory of motor racing is my dad shouting at the TV. And I think it was when Mansell overtook PK at Silverstone in 87. So I would have been about 3 or 2 or something like that. And I remember jumping out of my skin and he was enjoying that. And we watched Grand Prix. I can remember, a little few years later than that, I remember him saying about Damon coming in, and when Damon started to get success, that was really my sort of catalyst because it was the struggle of his journey, and I really enjoyed following all that. In terms of my own driving, I can remember being at Butlins in Bognor Regis, and they had a little kart track, and I went on that with you know other holiday makers, and I can actually remember overtaking it wasn't a race. In my head, it was like a Grand Prix, but it wasn't actually a race. And I remember there was this tyre that had come out from the tyre wall and was in the middle of the track, and I overtook this guy on the last corner of the last lap to finish the session, or in my head win the race, and that was it. We were off and running. I was ready to go and really loved it ever since.
Amazing. Yeah. Oh, that was going to be my follow-up. Did you win your first race? So that's great. No, that's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. I've got similar memories. Mansell was my guy. Was the moment. I think for me, and then definitely following Damon and his struggle. And boy, was it a struggle through Damon Hill's career
Yeah.
to get everything hooked up and lined up against Schumacher, of course. But no, fantastic stuff. So fast forward a little bit, you had that little go on in a go-kart at Butlins. When did you actually start really driving competitively? Did you skip karts? Did you go into karts?
No, we did karting. So from there, I ended up doing like a couple of birthday parties or what have you at Buckmore Park in Kent, which is probably about an hour from where I grew up. And when I got to, I think I was 13, we started going down to a local, an indoor circuit in Eastbourne called Tracks. And it wasn't very big and it certainly wasn't very glamorous, but it was brilliant school because we used to do these Saturday mornings and they'd be teaching us racecraft and how to drive and all this kind of thing. Um, but the circuit itself was really quite tight and twisty sort of indoor circuit. And I did that for a few years. Just once a month with my dad, we would go down there, and then we had a senior rate. I got offered to come, even though I think I was 15, and I got offered to enter there. It was called the Christmas Cracker. It's like an annual, and it was a big event. There were loads of people that came down. I think it was between Christmas and New Year, one of those sort of days. Um, and my first time doing it, I won the final, and I think that was the point. It was like, okay, we need to try and do more here. Um, I ended up getting that was would have been 99, and then by 2001, I bought my own kart, and it was a twin engine Honda Pro kart, and we raced in the championship was called Formula 6, and that was like a Southeast regional championship. So we weren't only going to one circuit and just pounding round. We were traveling to different circuits, a lot like all of the car championships these days, Miata Trophy and so on. And that was very valuable because it was a steep learning curve, but also really valuable for me to learn how to learn a circuit and drive different conditions because suddenly it was outside as well. There was weather to contend with, and that was it. We were off and running, and I went through karting um, for several years. I think we started cars in 2011, and I'd raced all the way up. So from 2001 to 2010, I was in karts solidly. Going from pro kart, we did some two-stroke in road tax. Quickly found I didn't really have the budget to compete properly. We went back to four-stroke racing. There was a TKM class, which was highly competitive, but much more straightforward mechanically. So you could just, it was like a mini fridge next to you in the cart, but it was good. Everyone could race them well. And that was good racing again in regional, but also national. Did the championship back then nationally was called Super One. And we did that. And I think I came fourth one year and won some races. And it was good stuff. We tried two stroke again, but it was tricky for us. We didn't have really the background in karting because my dad's never been a driver. He's very much into sport, cricket, and all these sorts of things. But as with most racing drivers of that age, you are relying on your family, and more often than not, it's a lad and dad affair. So we were travelling around in a van, doing our thing. Um, when it got to the point to move to cars.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, yes, that is, I'm sure, a very, very common experience among especially UK drivers. Is that time with the dad or time with the parent driving you around. And I feel a little bit like Anthony Hamilton put a lot of UK dads to shame by making the kind of sacrifices he did. It's the stuff
Yeah.
of legend now, but yeah.
Yeah, big gamble for that. And it was a struggle. Money is at any level of motor racing, whether you're doing arrive and drive or Formula One, even. There's it's all money out, and that is a tricky, a tricky element to the racing. It's a shame. It is a shame because other sports, if you're into football or tennis, or that barrier to entry is so much lower. Um, but we can go on about money all day.
No, man, it is, and certainly I think perhaps slightly different time as well. Not wishing to age yourself or myself particularly, but I think those sort of dream opportunities where
Mhm,
you know, company A arrives and sponsors some big, sim racing tournament, and the prize is a seat in their race team or whatever.
mm,
That kind of thing just didn't happen, and it was much more about who you knew and how much
mhm,
your parents or family were willing to bankroll this experiment, this hobby. But yeah, I mean, it's still super enjoyable, I'm sure. So you kind of felt like karting came to a natural conclusion. What made you think about the next step going into a a car cockpit? And was it the Fiestas?
yeah, that's right. It was the competition car insurance Ford Fiesta Championship as part of the BRSCC, and I was racing a class called Easy Kart at the time, which was actually a misnomer because it was difficult kart. It was really, really hard for us. They were nice. It was a two-stroke air-cooled engine, and we were going all over doing that. And I was, I seem to remember doing the at the end of the year there was it was called the E plate. So the winner would get to run the letter E instead of a number the next year. And I did the race, and it was wet, and I was way up the road. I was really enjoying myself, and then they red flagged it for some reason, pulled it all back. Or I think actually they cancelled the final, and we went on grid positions. Whatever, I didn't win it, and that would have been a ticket to the world finals in easy car, and that I think that really got up my nose, that kind of thing. And at the same time, someone my dad knew through work was saying, "Look, why don't you try out Fiestas?" He wasn't going to pay for it all, but he was sort of pushing us that way because he'd had motor racing experience with another driver, and they'd done Formula Ford and Formula Three, so this was a bit of fun for him. But I was like, yeah, this is right up my street. So we went and did. a track day at Liddon Hill with Daniels Motorsport, and I don't know what it was about cars, but I immediately seemed to manage to um, understand them quicker. I don't know if it's suspension or having three pedals and a gearbox or whatever it was, but it really suited me down to the ground. A lot. I was instantly more comfortable than I had ever been racing karts, and we did that track day, and team said that the times I was doing would have put me on the front row or what have you for the race meeting that had been there that year and bloody blah. And so then it was decided that this fella that introduced us to the Fiestas he's called John Haffenden. He said, right, well, I'll buy a car, and you run it with the team. So we did that, and it was not the most competitive championship in class. That was Class A, which is for the older. I can't remember what mark they are, but they're quite old, like early '90s Fiestas. They were good fun because they moved around behind, but underneath you quite a lot, and they're quite fun to drive. And it wasn't the biggest grids and perhaps the most competitive, like outright. However, there were lessons all the way through that year, dealing with different people that came in, and I had to race them, and learning how to switch on rear tires. With front wheel drive cars, you can easily, and they were slicks, so you had to work the tires, and then rain again, and all these sort of lessons that I had to learn through that first year. And we had a great time. It was really, really good. At the end of that year, I had to, decide what to do. And the main class in Fiestas at the time was called Class C. It was for the Fiesta ST, and that was competitive. We went and did that the next year. Um, and I think at that point, I actually did surprise a few people because no one knew. I didn't really know how good I was or anything, but went straight in there and we were getting podiums and won a few races. In that first year, came third overall, and that was really like, okay, this is for me.
Yeah, winning has a great way of of
Yeah.
encouraging you to carry on with something for sure. So, was this you mentioned that you were running it? Was this your dad helping to engineer, or had you been able to get a team around you at this point?
So at this point, we were depending totally on the race team because the mechanicking of cars for us we couldn't store a car, we couldn't transport a car at the time, all this kind of stuff. We were really relying on the team, and that was fine at the time. We had sponsorship from John Haffenden and a few other companies, and it was all good for those 2 years. And we were able to learn about the other aspects. Basically, for me, it took that element out, which was really good because I could concentrate on just driving and going to all these places for the first time. You go to Rockingham back then. These Donington, Alton, these circuits are, even little things like knowing where to go to the loo or when the cafe's open, stuff like that. Stuff that just mental load that you can sort all that out so that in the future, you go to brands and you know that you can go here and do that or what have you. You know your way around a bit more, and it does add up. I think it adds up. You've got to have a clear mind to race and perform at your best in any sport, I guess, or anything. So yeah, those first 2 years were a bit like that. And then it did start to pinch. We, John Haffenden wasn't able to support me after that financially, so I ended up doing a scholarship with Team Hard. That's Tony Gillam, and um, I'll be a bit biased, but I felt I should have perhaps won that, but I came third. Um, he was looking at several elements rather than just pace, and uh, the the prize for that was like half a paid drive in VW Cup, but I couldn't even get together. It sounds good, but you still have to raise £30,000. So I was like, oh,
Right.
that's a shame. We had a bit of a gap there for sort of 2013. And then 14 and 15, I met someone who wanted to get involved in racing, and I helped them out by being a bit of a driver coach, doing some of the driving, and that was my first foray into MSV racing, so track day trophy,
Yeah.
um, and learning about slightly longer races and pit stops and managing other people rather than just myself.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So this is you starting to do, you say, longer races. Was this kind of endurance class?
So those races were 45 minutes, I think. So in terms of actual track time per driver, they were probably only 20 minutes, really, because by the time you have a pit
Yeah.
stop in the middle, um, but inevitably, because I wasn't the one paying the bills, I would go second. So it would be quite interesting jumping in the car, seeing what I've inherited in terms of the condition of the tires and the brakes and where we are in the race and how hard to push or not. And it was interesting on that side of it, but also on the people side, trying to manage expectations of the other driver and sort of explaining how stuff worked with running a car and
Mm.
like going back to like I said earlier, there's a lot I joke about where the lose are, but there's a lot of other aspects to racing than just jumping in a car and driving around a track. uh, you know, Admin about being organised ahead of the event and signing on and all this kind of thing. So there was my teammate at the time. He got us out racing for about a year and a bit, and that was great to stay in. But that really set the scene for my beginning of Mazda racing because we had been watching. At the time, it was the BRSCC Mark One Championship was very popular to the point that they would be sort of 60 entrants per meeting, and they had this funny system of groups that race each other. But it looked absolutely brilliant, and that's when we made the decision. Or my dad said, "Look, I'll buy a car and we can run it ourselves."
Interesting. Wow. Okay. So that was quite a big step then, from learning to engineer cars to buying and running an MX-5 in race trim, because they are fully race trimmed, right? I mean, we're looking at roll cages and control tire and on all sorts, right?
Yeah. Oh, we were so green. It was bordering on hilarious at times because dad found a car for sale from his team called AB Motorsport, and we went there. We looked at the car. It looked great. It's a Mark One MX-5, which is the oldest type of Mazda MX-5.
Hmm.
Small little sports car. It was white, had a purple cage. It's all stripped out. You have the rules dictate that you have to have a certain damper built by Gaz. We all had to have controlled tires, which at the time were Hankooks, and that was it. There was a maximum power that the cars were tested regularly to make sure you're not overpower. And other than that, it was supposed to be pretty simple. Obviously, the devil's in the detail, and you get drilling into it. And as the years passed, you find out, okay, you can change spring rates and you can do all the geometry and all that stuff. But um, we were so green the first time we bought the car, we picked it up. You know, Dad's investment was the car, which was under £5,000, and a trailer. So great, we can get going. We went down to our local, that was Lydden Hill as well, actually, as it goes. And I went out and I thought, I am never going to get on top of this thing because there's no roof. So the noise was pretty like attacking, I suppose, and quite off putting. And the car felt bizarre and I couldn't get on with it, just felt really alien. And like that first morning, we totally ruined the brakes. That we had to go home. We didn't even complete the day. So it was obvious we had to get on top of a few bits. And subsequently, we did run with the team we bought the car from, AB Motorsport,
Yeah.
and I did the first Mazda race I did was at Silverstone, the last round of the 2016 championship, and it was great. I remember I was on bald tires and it was raining, and so subsequently I was at the back of the field. And the way that the championship then worked, it was a really good system. It was a promotion relegation system. So you have three races through the weekend, and you qualify where you qualify. And if you're in the top half, you're in race A, and if you're bottom half, race B. So if you finish in the bottom five of race A, you're relegated for race two, and they swap round. So I was down into the B race for the second race or the third race. I can't remember which one. And I had a spark plug fail in the race, so I was sort of intermittently down to 3 cylinders, and I was fighting away, and I can't remember where I finished 3rd or 4th in this B race. But instantly, what really struck me was I came into the pits, and all of the team around me, looking at the car, seeing what happened, saying, "Well done," and I was like, I hadn't felt that. I really enjoyed my Fiesta time, but they were running so many cars, and it was a different atmosphere. Whereas these boys, I thought, "They're right behind me. This is good." I'm gonna learn a lot here. In the team, there were sort of 4 or 5 front runners. I thought, Crikey, if you can beat all the teammates in this team, you'll be on the podium." And that proved to be true because they're all really good drivers, and I learned a lot from them and the guys, running the cars. So that set us off towards 17 and 18, another steep learning curve, um, doing the Mark ones.
Mhm. So, that MX-5 championship ended in success for you, um, in 2019. But what was the journey from that last race of, was it 2016 through to those intermediate years? How did that journey work? Did you change to a Mark 3 at that point, or was that whole journey in the Mark 1?
That was all Mark 1 in the same car all the way through, from being
Wow.
absolutely nowhere, scared at Liddon Hill on that first track day with no brakes, to winning the championship at the end of 19 was the same car. Obviously, it's a bit like Trigger's broom. We did have to change a
Yeah.
few parts, but yeah, 17 was, I was sort of always running in and around the top 10. Maybe, I had my moments. I think I had a front row qualifying at Anglesey. We were always in the right area, but there was something missing. And because it was new to us, quite we weren't quite able to put our finger on it. But I felt that I was learning a lot and getting to grips with everything. And then in the start of yes, at the end of 17, we had engine troubles, and we took decision to get a fresh engine from the there were several engine builders at the time, but we chose a company called Blink Motorsport, and they were very highly regarded. They built a lot of engines at the time, so um, great. We'll get an engine over the winter between 17 and 18. Fitted that, and I had a couple of seventh places or something. It wasn't drastically different in the start of 18, and
Mm,
we just couldn't work out what was going on. And at Cadwell Park, which was the 3rd round of the year, the first race, I was backing up half the field. By the end of the race, I couldn't hang on. I couldn't hang on to anyone. And then that night we worked out there was a problem in the cooling of the car, which was making me overdrive and subsequently the tyres getting overhot as well. So by the end of the race, I had a cooked engine and cooked tyres. Right, let's change all that. Literally overnight, the guys did it. And um, I came 5th in the next race. And I remember going over the finish line celebrating, and the commentator, when I look back on it, said, "Oh, look, that's how much it means to come 5th in this championship, how hard it is." And what I was celebrating was the fact I was in the game because I could see the race
yeah.
winner, and I was like, "We could," I said to Ali Bray, AB Motorsport, I said, "We could win this afternoon." And he was a bit sort of like, "Okay, well, that's good," but he was a bit sort of, raise the eyebrow. And
Mhm.
I was so fired up, and we won the last race that day. So I went from the day before struggling to finish in the top 12 or whatever to the next afternoon winning that race. And that was my first podium in Mazdas, in the A races. And after that, not it was not easy at all. But suddenly I was racing at the front, and I managed to score podium finishes in every meeting after that, win a couple more races, and that set me up beautifully um, for the championship season. When I did change team, moved over to Blink, they said, "Do you want to come with us?" And that just gave me, AB were fantastic and they were really good for me. They were running several cars, and at Blink, I was pretty much one of two, or maybe on my own at some meetings. So I had full attention, and that just gave me the last couple
Yeah.
of tenths that was put me into a championship fight that year, which was hard because there were some top drivers racing back then, and still are actually. Will Blackwell Chambers was my main competitor, and yeah, he's a hard man to beat. He was then, and he still is now.
Fantastic. No, that's brilliant. And so, obviously something happened between 2019 and getting together with Miller Motorsport and your current team, headed by Alex Miller. So how did that come about? Because this is born some amazing races, some great success, and what seems certainly from my perspective to be a really solid partnership between the two of you.
Yeah, he's all right, isn't he, Alex? He got in touch with me.
You like him so much you can't possibly say a nice thing about him. Yeah, I know.
Um, so at the end of 19, we'd made the decision already to move to the Mark III Mazda, and so
Mm,
sold the Mark One. Got Blink were built me a Mark III out of a donor car, and the plan was to go into Super Cup, which was the BRSCC's Mark III Championship, and
yeah.
at the time, Super Cup had been, or before 2020, Super Cup had been supporting the TCR package, and it had kind of dwindled a bit. The top 3 or 4 guys were rapid, including Aidan Hills, some big names there. Aidan
Yeah.
Hills, Blake Baldwin, Herbert, like, the top Mark III guys, and but there wasn't much sort of strength in depth behind them, I don't think. There was good racing and stuff, but it was a small field. But for 2020, it was all coming back. So several of I we took the decision to move into Mark threes with Blink, and it was going to be really good fun year. I think some other guys were coming over from the Mark ones as well, but obviously the old pandemic kicked in and kind of
Mm,
took a bit of a shine to sort of split the season, really, didn't it? We all did half a season from about July onwards. Um, but during that pandemic time, the BRCC was saying about doing some 45-minute races, a little bit like the track day trophy stuff I'd done years before. I got a message from this fella on Instagram, you know, do you want to do some of this together? That doesn't happen every day. I gave him a ring. Um, I stated my position financially. Said, I'm happy to race, but I don't have any extra money other than my own budget to put in, and if I bend it,
mm,
I can't really pay for damage. And he was like, yeah, that's okay. Now we know where we stand. That's fine. So that was Alex. And then in the first few meetings, I was running in the Super Cup, and then we'd jump, and so was Alex actually. And then we'd jump in his car to do this two driver races as well. So we were I was getting plenty of track time in a Mark III across two different cars. Um, and that's
mm,
how we started, just by doing work together. Basically, he would be engineering it, and I would be looking at his VBox data or his footage and trying to help him learn different things as I was learning as well with the Mark III. But I was being more experienced because he was fairly new to racing at the time. I think he'd be going 2 or 3 years, but we were trying to, you know, get quicker together. And in the start of 2021, unfortunately, uh, Fraser, who ran Blink, had a stroke, and so it all went up in the air with the race team that I was with. And the long and short of it was that they closed down as a racing concern. And Alex said, "Well, why don't you just get an awning and just pitch up with me?" So we did, and that's how that began. Really, and we did.
it's that simple, starting a team. Just buy an awning.
Yeah, pretty much. And we just started parking next to each other, and because he's very handy mechanically. He's really got that brain for working things out, and he loves getting involved. And
Yeah.
so um, he would help out on my car, and while I would go through his footage, that was sort of our dynamic. Try and make each other quicker. At the same time, at
Nice.
at home, my local garage, because by now Blink had stopped, we had to dust off the trailer and start um, transporting and storing the car ourselves, which we could now do because my parents had moved, so it was a different setup at home, so that was easier. My local MOT garage, I met the guy there who used to run historic Volvos or something, and anyway, we struck it off, and he still runs me now as a mechanic. So we take it to the local garage between races, which is what happens now as well as a couple of years ago, and we prepare the cars there. And now Terry comes along and is part of as much as part of the team as I am, for Miller Motorsport. So we're sort of a conglomerate of waifs and strays, but all completely amateur.
Yeah,
Having a bash at racing these brilliant cars.
absolutely. So I first encountered the beginnings of the Miata Trophy um, in 2022 when it was doing kind of a guest appearances, and I had my first trackside commentary gig was at Silverstone National, and it was supporting basically the track day trophy day of activities, and there was a massive, massive field of different types of cars, but certainly it caught my eye immediately. I think partly due to the Worley family liveries, I think that just stood out from everybody else. But were you involved that year, or did you sign up to start in 2023?
No, I wasn't part of it in 22, but I realized that I'm quite a nerd. I'm on TSL. I look at other
Yeah,
races and watch other streams, and you could see that Track Day Trophy slash Championship had a lot of MX5s, and I heard
yeah,
that Ray and Borum were working with MSV to set up a championship standalone for Mazdas. And at the time, I wasn't particularly enjoying my racing.
mm,
I felt that in Super Cup, we were doing okay. I came fourth that year, I think, and I was always be in and around the top six, but I really felt that I couldn't compete for several reasons. But it was becoming a bit of an arms race in Super
mm,
Cup, and ends were getting big, and there were some other bits and bobs going on, and I was ready to not do 3 or 4 day weekends as well at home,
sure.
2 kids. So that's a big commitment to be away 8 times a year for
Mm,
3 or 4 days. And I can't remember the moment, but I remember hearing about Miata Trophy. It's gonna be a one-day race weekend. You could do Friday, which we do tend to do, so Friday, Saturday. And it was sold to me in that these are the rules, and if you don't like them, don't come, and if you break them, that's it. There was no wiggle room. It was very black and white. And I thought, yeah, that's a bit of me actually. I like that. And it did actually come back to bite me at one point, because the rules were slightly different to Super Cup.
yes.
There were obviously it's totally my responsibility to go through the rules, but I'm not particularly technical. And whatever, I didn't have this ABS pump in the car because you're not supposed to have ABS. And in Super Cup, we didn't used to even put the pumps in because you're not supposed to have
Hmm.
ABS. But in Miata Trophy, we were supposed to have the pump not plugged in, but plumbed in. And anyway, that caught up with me. I didn't even know what an ABS pump was until I got to scrutineering after one of the races,
Right.
and that cost me that championship season. But you know, that I was angry about that because I was like, "Oh, that's rubbish rule, and it's not even doing anything anyway." But then on reflection, the week after, I thought, "Do you know what? Stuart and the guys at MSV were absolutely right. Whether I know or not, it's that's my problem. The rules,
Right.
whether they're good or not, you got to follow them." And
Yeah.
they were completely right to be firm because that set a really good precedent, and they're firm on driving standards as well. And I don't know, all of that just appealed to me, and it was impressive. MSV have got a lot of clobber, so they put on a great show for the first round. We went to Brands Hatch on the GP track, which I'd only been round once before, I think about
Yeah.
10 years before. And, so that set the stall. And there were some smaller grids through the year, but, never below 15. And it was a very successful first year. Um,
It was.
so, yeah, they did well. They did really well.
Yeah, and it meant, I presume, some new tracks for you to enjoy.
Yeah, the GP track at Brands, definitely. I'd not raced around there. Um, or even really done track days around there. But most of the others were solid MSV tracks. So it was good to go to Anglesey that first year and last year,
Right.
2024.
Yeah.
I love going to Anglesey because, yeah, it's a long way, but it's like going on a racing holiday.
It was my favourite event
Yeah.
of the year as well. Getting out there, obviously decamping for the day. I did a Wales tour with a good friend of mine in our respective cars with walkie-talkies
Oh, nice.
on the in the few days leading up to it as well. So I made a whole big event of it. But yeah, I was never happier than calling that.
Yeah. Was that in Mazdas? Was that in MX-5s you were in?
I was in mine,
Oh,
yes.
nice.
My mate was in a BMW 1 Series, which smoked me on every straight. But
But you were smiling, so smiling wider.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we traded, and I felt absolutely nothing in the steering of that BMW. It was so washy in comparison to what I've been driving. It was
Yeah, yeah.
just felt really wet to me. So, um, and for me, it was the handling was way more of a satisfying aspect of the car than the power.
Oh,
But yeah, no, it was brilliant.
it's one of those things. I mean, I'm sure we might get onto other racing in a minute, but I look around every year at what other championships are out there and what's doing well, and
Right,
it's hard to move class when you run yourself because inevitably you got the car, but inevitably you got like a garage full of gearboxes and bumpers and bits and bobs
sure.
that it's quite an upheaval to move class. But I could never see anything pound for pound better value than Mazda racing because the bits are relatively cheap. If you need a brake caliper, it's not £5,000 like Porsche or whatever. And
Right.
they're just they can let you get away with murder in terms of handling times. They're so good. They're brilliant for
Yes.
the beginner or more experienced drivers. They're just so good.
Yeah, easy to get on top of, but take many seasons to master, I imagine. They're fantastic little machines. Hands down my favorite, for sure, that I've driven and I've had a go at. But as you say, bang for buck, tremendous, tremendous little cars. So I'm gonna have to talk about Declan Lee in a minute, but that year was an epic battle between the two of you, and Anglesey was kind of the real culmination of a lot of that between yourself and young Declan. So much so that my broadcast director, who was sat to my left, just outside my eye line, was so keyed in. He was up on his feet and cheering at the action that we were that we were getting. And we only had, I think, 3 cameras on that track that day. So half the track we couldn't see what was happening. But there was a moment, I think, as one of the races was coming to a conclusion, where you looked like you were going to get him before the line, and it was the tension, the enjoyment. What was it like 2023 going tooth and nail against Declan?
Yeah, he's hard to
Yeah,
beat. He's fast and he's got an incredible touch, like control. He does this drifting stuff separately from the Mazda racing, and that just I don't know if that is cause or effect, but he's always had a really good touch, especially in the wet. He's really got that down, and he's happy. He's comfortable with the car sort of sideways more than I am, to be fair. I actually met Declan back in 2019 when he started, and he'd raced that same car all the way through. So we were both at Blink, and so I knew him quite a bit of a younger man, straight fresh out of karts. And fast forward to 2023, and obviously I'm with Alex in the Miller Motorsport team, and he's then with Hills, and we'd come across each other a couple of times in Super Cup. We'd cross swords a few times, and it was quite early on in the year. I was like, okay, this is going to be, I'm going to race this kid quite a lot this year. And that particular Anglesey weekend, I don't think I'd won a race at that point. Yeah, Anglesey was my first race win, wasn't it, in Miata Trophy? And I was very motivated to overtake him in that first race. Really threw everything at it. I don't know if I got actually past him at any point, but we were alongside a lot next to each other, and it was good fun. It was really good fun, and thankfully in the second race I did do the job
yeah,
and actually left with a trophy with the proper number on it. But I was really happy that weekend. That was a really great race, and he's been a pain in my side ever since. Actually, racing all
yeah,
through 2023, up until that ABS pump problem, we were very close in the championship, and it was
yeah,
probably he would have gone all the way. I think he would have shaved it because there were a lot of wet races, and like I say, he's very good in those conditions. And then
mm,
in 24, it was a bit of a question mark because there are other drivers coming in by this point,
yeah,
and which is only natural for a new championship as it grows. But it did boil down to the two of us again. we got to the position. He had a problem this time at Snetterton as well, which is where my ABS problem was middle of the season, and it got to the point where I could just follow him all the second half of the year and collect points. But um, that in itself isn't that easy. 'Cause,
No.
there's other people out there, and he's quick.
Yeah. It's part of driving for a championship often is having to drive a little bit less than 10 tenths and just managing the gap to the main rival.
Yeah,
Whereas I guess 23, it was more you were chasing, you were trading wins, and there was a lot more glory on track in the moment. But ultimately, Declan triumphed in that first year, as you say, due to factors not necessarily 100% in your control. But then 24 was just such a different experience for you.
yeah.
How did that feel like not picking up trophies with the same regularity?
Well, I think we were regularly on the podium, but I wasn't. Look, what's your goal, right? So at the start of the year, my
Yeah,
goal was to win the championship, not to go out in a blaze of glory, winning one race and then binning it in the next. So
sure.
I knew we won. I did well early on, but after that midpoint of the season, when I had quite a comfortable gap, it was a case of not shutting up shop, but I did have to rein myself in at times when I
Mm,
wanted to go for a move to maybe win a race or get another position. But always had in the back of my mind that what my goal was, and subsequently we achieved it, and it was great. It was kind of an odd feeling, but it was kind of half relief and half satisfaction that it was done. And now I need to remember how to get off the leash again and go full attack mode in 25.
how are the preparations coming? I saw another gearbox in bits on Miller Motorsports Insta page, but at this point, I kind of suspect Alex just likes taking gearboxes apart. But what other preparations are you able to get in place?
Yeah, Alex is he's always mad keen taking gearboxes and diffs apart and building engines and stuff. But yeah, I'll leave that to him. Over the winter, we've been doing normal regular maintenance, so that would be servicing things like the dampers and just going through the car and making sure all the nuts and bolts are in the right way and um, you know working because there's some of the bolts are to do with the geometry, so you want to make sure that you can actually use them.
Mm,
And, just going through the car, making sure it's all good. My mechanic Terry, I told you about earlier, he actually did some work for another team. We run historic cars, and they've been giving us some ideas of things to try and in the preseason testing we've done so far, it's been good. You know,
mm.
just all it's like in the cycling they used to say marginal gains, didn't they? And it's all little bits here and there, and hopefully we'll be able to come out the blocks pretty quick, and we're going to need to have to be because again, like between 23 and 24, I think we're going to be getting an influx of probably a bigger influx now, from what I've heard of drivers from other championships and quality drivers as well. This is, you know, I would love to win the Miata Trophy again in 25, but I'm no under no illusions that it's going to be far harder in 25
Mm.
to do that. But that's why we go racing, right? And we're going to get stuck in and have some fun.
Well, as you said, you didn't earlier in your career, you didn't want things to be easy, and a small field. But talk about influx. Last year, you had quite a famous teammate for a couple of events.
Yeah, yeah. So Alex, because he's such a kind-natured soul, he's was doing some charity stuff like cycling events and what have you, raising money for charity. And he saw online a certain Mr. Paul O'Neill advertising for people to come and do a ride with him. And Alex went and did that and struck up a really good friendship with him. So Paul, who of BTCC fame and obviously commentary nowadays,
Yep.
has um has joined us a couple of times in 24, and he's he's a funny lad. We get on quite well actually. I met him years and years ago when I used to do work at Bedford Autodrome when he was there doing like corporate instructing and stuff. But we different lives. It was a long time ago, but yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun having him around the team a couple of times, and I don't know if he's out this year. I'm not sure. He'll probably do one or two. So never know. Might bring Mel C along with him. Who knows?
Was he running a third Miller Motorsport car? for those events?
Yes, Alex arranged hiring a car from another team and
Okay.
then proceeded to spend the whole weekend trying to change it so that Paul was happy. And it worked because in the first weekend he flipping came along and won a race, didn't he?
He did pretty
Um,
well, yeah, he did pretty well, and I was getting a bit nervous for you and your championship there for a few minutes. How did it feel in the team
it was good.
to have an all-star driver show up and
Yeah, it made the awning a bit busier for sure, but it was good because it was all over the other end for me. But no, it's good to have him around and get to know him and, watching his footage and trying to we did some, going through stuff together and that was quite interesting, how we could help each other in certain areas, and at the end of the year, he came back and did the last round at Brands Hatch as well, which is good because the aforementioned Declan, he had lots of teammates, and I was a bit concerned about, if Declan won, I needed to come 5th or whatever it was, and it could be quite tricky for me, but Paul was helpful in that regard, and yeah, that's good.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, was it his first experience doing Miata Trophy Spec MX-5s, or did he have some stuff to come and ask you and learn about, or did he come in with pre-baked knowledge already?
So he actually raced in the early days of MX-5 Super Cup as well, and so he has experience of he's got experience of all sorts anyway. He's a professional. He's out there all the time doing coaching and instructing. But I was surprised when he was sat there and he's like, "Oh, right, you're doing that. I need to do that then." And, "Oh, okay." I thought it was gonna be the other way around, you're gonna tell me
Yeah,
more, but, between us, we muddled through some stuff and got his car up and running at Donington, and he had some really good races, and I struggled a bit that day, but by the end of the year, we were sort of on terms. But it did highlight how guys like him, professionals operate. They're there to do a job, and yeah, he's fun, and he has a laugh with the guys and with people in the awning and stuff. But when it came down to it, he was pretty serious about wanting to
yeah.
have success.
It was a really interesting and intriguing aspect of 2024. And as you say, if we get more guest drivers, I'm sure that will raise the profile and therefore, obviously, the value of
Mm.
being a champion in the series as well. But yeah, hopefully, we still retain some of those core drivers that have made it what it is to this day, to this point. So, okay, talk to me then. I mean, we talked a little bit about cars, but what about the circuits that you've been racing on? Where do you derive the most sort of satisfaction? Which corner, which track gives you the biggest smile?
Oh, that's hard. We're so privileged to race at any of them, but there are obviously favourites. A track day at Cadwell is a great day out, and
Hmm.
that is a hard circuit, and it's a joy to drive. I love racing at Alton because I think the circuit is fabulous. That's probably my favourite circuit in the country because there's just got everything. Um, Likewise, for different reasons, racing at Silverstone, which is a completely different sort of circuit, flat,
Yeah,
long, wide corners, but the racing is normally in a Mazda anyway. Fantastic. You can have so much fun. You watch the Formula Ford Festival there, and it's tight. It's good stuff. So yeah, I mean, I could say all the normal ones. Paddock Hill Bend, fantastic corner. Going off around the GP track there, it is brilliant. It's
yeah.
all brilliant. And yeah, I'm under no illusions that if we're lucky to do it completely.
Ah, that's fantastic. We talked about that issue in 2023 on a technical side, but what other sort of setbacks have you overcome in your racing career so far?
A lack of commercial awareness, I think. And I don't know if I've even overcome that yet. The game is, if we wanted to go up a level from Mazdas, realistically, you're probably looking at something like GT4 level, be that, GT Cup or Brit Car or over in the Toka package. And honestly, you're adding a 0, if not more.
Right.
So
Wow.
it's a big jump. And that's something I've never been very good at really, which I need to improve on. Yeah, that was a big one. I remember when I like my first ever year karting, 2001, I had a hit. I went up the inside of someone and we tangled and we went into a wall. I was, really new, and that affected me for quite a while, having a
Sure.
crash. I've been quite lucky, oh, touch and wood, so far in my career that I've not actually had any really big the biggest hit I've ever had was I was stationary for it. I'd been turned round and I was sat there as a load of traffic was coming towards
Oh,
me. And I did have a hit at Alton in 23 as well. But I'm not one of those. Maybe it's because I have to work at building myself up on a race weekend. I don't tend to go straight to the limit or over it and lob it off. Probably because I have to fix it as well. So it doesn't help.
and that I think that is a big contrast between yourself and Declan, because I feel like Declan has this attitude in testing and practice day of get to the limit immediately, go over it,
Yeah.
and find out where it is.
Yeah.
And I sort of chuckled a few times that 2023 season because if you saw a car in the gravel on a Friday, it was probably
Yeah.
Declan,
Yeah.
and he was just that's how he that was his process,
Yeah.
and obviously it works for different people. And as you say, he's done a lot of kind of drift driving as well,
Yeah.
and so handling the car beyond that limit is very familiar for him.
Yeah. There are several guys that I've come across in Mazda racing down the years who are just have that touch. They can just get out in a car. Brian Chandler, Ali Bray, Ben Short, these boys are like old school Mazda races, and they can get out in pretty much any car and take it to the limit within, you know, seconds. And I've never
Right.
been like that. I've always had to grow into it and
Yeah.
build myself up, and that's just the way we are. It's just natural that we're all different, and
Yeah.
maybe that's what helps Declan's confidence in the wet that he can just lob it into a corner and he's just knows that it will catch and he'll go around probably because on the Fridays he's been trying that out and there's no that's not the wrong answer. That's
Right.
that's a good way of going about it. But I have to fix my car and there's other factors at play, aren't there? So
Yeah.
I don't think I would do that anyway.
I remember going down to the paddock, one of the events. It might have been Donington, and I was walking through the pit lane, and it wasn't the Miata trophies that had the garages that weekend. I remember seeing a driver on his hands and knees reaching out underneath the car, and the entire team personnel were just standing around laughing. And I said, "What's going on here?" And they said, "Oh, it's his punishment. If he goes off the track, he has to clean the car out himself." And I thought that was quite an interesting approach, but clearly it worked for that
Yeah.
for that team and how they went racing.
We used to have one at AB where I did that once, and they said, "Why are you doing this?" I was cleaning the gravel out. I said, "Well, it was my mistake. I should do it."
Nice.
They said, "No, you don't need to do that, but you do have to have these ballerina shoes in your car until someone else goes off." These flipping ballerina shoes tied up in my roll cage. About 4
That's
months
good.
until the next guy went off.
That's good as well. Yeah. Whatever motivates them.
Yeah.
So, you talked about commercial side, and I mean, actually, like that first season where I was trackside and interviewing you guys, you were the first of the drivers to make sure you had your correct sponsor's hat on, literally, during the video interviews after the race. How has that process progressed for you? Who have been your biggest supporters, and what kind of reciprocal value can you
Mm.
offer to them?
It's yeah, that's a good question. So in the early days, it was John Haffenden, like I said, with the
Yep.
Fiestas. And racing the Fiestas, I met another man called Nick Tiley, and he's been absolutely fantastic for me over the years. And his company is called Cambridge FD, and you'll see it on pretty much every car I've driven over the last decade. And when we go racing, it's great. If Nick comes, it's great because he's like, uh, because he understands, because he's raced himself, he understands the nuances and bits and bobs. So I don't have to explain. Not that it's a problem at all, but he knows what's going on with how the team is and what's going on with the whatever it is we're doing. And then because he's so on top of it, he can then relay that to other people or take someone around the car and all this kind of stuff. So we've got Nick this year. Nick's around. We've got a company that for a few years ago I met this man Daryl, and he's got a cool property maintenance, but it's also to do with insurance claims. And his son is getting into karting now.
Yep.
So our deal is that I go and coach young Finley, when he has his kart races and kart events. So that's a good way, good little good little sideline for me because I'm sort of looking at what I know and trying to impart the right amount of information at any one time because you don't want to overload someone, but
Yeah.
also you've got to give them enough to go on. So learning to do that sort of coaching is fantastic. And what I've learned is that, like, right, people buy from people, don't they? I can write out proposals and email them to as many people as I like, unless you actually get in front of someone and get to know them a bit. That's when the value starts.
Yeah.
And different value in terms of from me to them is measured differently. Like, Daryl wants his son to get the most out of his early karting journey, then great. If I can help that, brilliant.
Yeah.
Nick wants to come to races and spend a Saturday, a couple of times a year around race cars. That great. I can do that. At our level, it is really difficult to get a old school sticker on the side sponsor because while there are eyeballs now, given YouTube, that has changed things actually. Having YouTube and social media has helped with all of that.
Yeah.
We're not on the Toka package. We're not getting 1.2 million eyes a weekend or whatever. So you have to be creative, and that is definitely an area I need to improve on. But I'm not giving up on it.
No, that's great, and I'd seen, some of the changes that you're bringing in for this season, with, as you say, with Finley and branching into some driver coaching and stuff. So that's a really interesting uh, way to do that value transfer. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it is more about what can I help you with. And
Yes.
in these instances, it's great. And the other sponsors I've had recently, Hardline Brewery guy, I met him in the line for signing on years ago. We ended up doing what I with my friend here. We run a digital agency, so I ended up building websites for him. One of them was this brand of beer that he started producing. So he wanted to come to some races, so we, put the stickers on the car, build the brand up a bit, and that it does help a little bit, and it's good for him because then he can shout about it on his side while he's growing, and
Yeah.
it's all this sort of thing that it's not just 70s style, yeah, sticker on the car, cheers, bye. You have to, and I like doing it, dealing with people, and I can't afford to do the racing off my own back,
Yeah.
just off my own money. So it's a necessity that isn't the worst thing in the world because get to meet and deal with these good people. Yes, yesterday, speaking to you on a Monday here. Yesterday, I was at the track with Finley, and we were going through bits and bobs that we can do to make him quicker, and what he's got coming up, and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even when I was doing a little sim racing competition, which was a time trialing, you were one of the first people to shout up and show me what I was doing wrong in Paddock Hill, for instance, and I really appreciated that. That was very kind of you. But yeah, it's one of those things that you can't help when you know so much and you collect those skills and the right kind of person. You just yeah, it was great, and it's partly why it's such a pleasure to have visited the team from various times in the paddock, and to have this chat today. It's tremendous. So, what's next for you in racing? Do you see a goal? I mean, obviously this year, 2025 is going to be Miata Trophy, but do you have a realistic goal? Do you have a dream goal of where you'd love to be further down the line?
Yeah, I'm gonna be in Formula One.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's look, I'm 40 now.
Yep.
I turned 40 last year, so you know I've got more years behind me than in front of top level club racing. I think it would be nice. Look, we're doing Miata Trophy this year. I've really enjoyed racing the car, and I've gotten to the point over the last few years where I want to enjoy my racing more. That's almost
Right.
more important. Having the weekend away, enjoying the weekend, and for me, a big part of that is being competitive and success, but mainly I want to be competitive.
Yeah.
And I get to do it with my dad and our merry band, and that's brilliant. I would I would like to know, just part of my I would like to know how I would stack up in something like a support, on the Toka package or
Right.
GT4 British GT or something like that. I really am curious to know how I would do in those sort of environments because it would be very different. But at the end of the day, they shut the door and you're on the track, which is the bit I'm used to. So it would be fascinating if I would be able to get out in something like that. But I think the future beyond Mazdas, because there's a lot of club racing out there, there's a lot of opportunities to do different things. It would be good to do some more endurance stuff. Alex and I ran endurance racing a couple of years ago and had some success doing that, sort of 2 hour races or more. That's quite good fun. I'd love to have a go at historic racing one day, maybe historic endurance, combine the both. But, whatever. I'm not fussy or precious about driving different things. We've got actually part of the prize for winning the Miata trophy is a drive with the other MSV champions, so the track day championship, class winners and what have you.
Yep.
And we're all going to be sharing Ford KA in the 12-hour race on the Sunday of this first race weekend of the year, which, on the face of it, you think, oh, why would you want to be out in the 4K? But I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be fascinating experience
Yep.
to drive on the face of it a slow car, but if everyone's in the same thing, it doesn't matter anyway. So it's going to
Right.
be all about the detail of precision with the driving to make sure that you're getting the maximum speed through each corner, and just like any other racing, I guess. But
And coping with the heat as well, because those little things, and after run hot.
yeah, you're not wrong. So it's going to be all sorts of different things to enjoy in that, and I'm really looking forward to that. So
Fantastic.
branching out, I don't want to be a one-trick pony, and
Yes.
it would be nice to branch out. Yeah.
But what about tracks? What kind of racetracks that you haven't got to yet, would you think, "One day I've gotta do that. I have to give that a go."
Okay, yeah. So there are couple of
Yep.
bucket list things. I've never raced at Thruxton. Don't know why. The championships, or Castlecombe, the championships have never taken me. That I've been doing have taken me there. So be good to do those and Goodwood. So I live in the south and I haven't been to any of those three circuits to race. So
Yeah.
they need to happen. And I do have a soft spot for Formula Ford cars. And before I'm too old and decrepit, I would love to do the Walter Hayes and or the festival. That would be totally alien, and that would be brilliant. Be
Yep.
really good to do one of those one year.
Fantastic. But so we're staying within the UK shores pretty much here.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, well, let's go Monaco then, yeah. And, I'd like to do Spa. I have to yeah, there's obviously there's
Right.
some historic European circuits out there as well. Um,
Yeah.
I'd be happy to we're really lucky in this country. We've got some really loads of quality circuits all within 6, 7 hours drive of each other. Um, we're very lucky.
Tremendous. Tremendous. So, okay, I'm really, really grateful for the amount of generosity you've given with your time today. What do you think is the best piece of advice you've ever given? It can be racing, it can be outside of racing, but what stands out for you as something, we're looking for to inspire people around motorsport.
Okay. Well, I've got a motorsporty one actually. Through a family connection, we know Gary Paffett's dad, Jim. Really nice guy. He was in his own right top mechanic for karting team Zipkart, and obviously followed his son's career very closely all the way up to the.
Yeah, I mean, seasoned F1 tester and DTM champion and WEC driver. Yeah,
And he said to me, John, always do a championship you can afford to win in. And what he means is, I took that as enjoying. So I could stretch myself and go and do, a more expensive championship, but only do 2 or 3 rounds, and you wouldn't, take Formula Ford. You could go and do the Formula Ford championship through the whole year, but I'd only be able to afford a couple of rounds, and I wouldn't be ever in a position to win, or at least in my eyes, put a good account of yourself forward. So I really took that on board. I was like, yeah, okay. Obviously that doesn't mean don't try and get the finances in place. Always try and get the finances in place and aim as high as you can. But be realistic. In my eyes, you're better off doing more laps and becoming a better driver by doing as much as you can at a level that you can afford to do it at. Because see some of these guys, and they're doing like touring cars or whatever, and they have a hit, and that's it for the year. And you think that's no fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always thought that was good advice, what he said around that. And he also said nothing is guaranteed until you're on the grid. You know,
Mhm.
doesn't matter. I know obviously those two are like commercial sort of side tips, but or advice that I was given.
It makes a lot of sense because motor racing is incredibly addictive, and you know, there's always someone with a better bit of kit, or there's a faster car out there, or there's something that sparks the interest, and it's a little bit like lap time, isn't it? You always want to go a little bit quicker, or you always want to try the next thing. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's not about motivating racing drivers to go faster or be more ambitious, but actually reining it in a little bit means that you can, as you say, get more seat time.
And achieve more, hopefully, because if someone turns around and says, "Okay, well they won that championship, great, might give them a
Right.
chance." You never know. If you've got to be at the table to play, and if you can do that and not, we joked about Lewis Hamilton's dad, but it could have so easily gone wrong and has gone wrong for so many
Sure.
others. So do go all in. If you want to go all in, absolutely, go for it, my friend. But when you're spending all that money that you've generated, do it in a way that's actually going to give you some value back. And that would be not by heading straight to the top of whatever pyramid you're after, but working your way there. Do your dues, I
Mm,
suppose,
mm,
and work it out. But
yeah,
the driving side, a lot of people, that's not the problem. There are a lot of good drivers out there, and to get longevity, it's the other bits around the edge, I think, that need to happen. So, but yeah, it's an unfortunate side of racing, really, isn't it? That's why, I know you're really into the sim racing world, and it makes it so much more accessible. Yes, there's costs involved, but they're assets, and you can get rid of them at the end. You're not not as bound. Just because it's not a real car doesn't mean it's not
right,
a real race,
right.
right? So there's many ways to enjoy motor racing these days. So get out there and do it.
That's a fantastic way to end. But if I fail to ask something, or there's anything left to say,
Yeah, well, I'm not used to chatting on about myself so much, but look, if there is anyone out there who's into motor racing and would like to become involved as a commercial partner, or just wants to say hi, I'm quite happy to chat racing. I love it. Come to a race meeting. We're all over the country, seven-ish weekends this year, maybe one more, and come along, enjoy the ride, and if you want to get involved and have a sticker on the car or whatever value you need, then yeah, happy to chat.
absolutely. And there wouldn't be a better person to invest in than the 2024 Miata Trophy champion. So you say you're all over the country, but a sore point for me because you're not coming to Croft, and that's my local track. So so, so the Northeast definitely needs a chapter.
The Track Day Championship is, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. No, it's a cracking circuit, and I think the Track Day Championship's up there, but we're not for some reason, which is a bit odd.
But yeah, if you find yourself at a loose end and want to stop by them in a motorsport awnings at one of the many race meetings for the Miata Trophy this season, you will find John Langridge and Alex Miller, a very willing audience to chat, unless they're trying to fix something. But I'm sure everybody's sensible enough to um, to be sensitive to that. Thanks so much, John. It's been an absolute pleasure to have this time together.
Thanks, Webbo. Thank you so much for having me, and yeah, best of luck with the podcast.
Thank you so much. You can find John online at johnlangridge.com or on Instagram at johnlangridge. And make sure that you follow the Miata Trophy socials and miatatrophy.com for this year's calendar. It begins on the 15th of March 2025 in Snetterton at the 300 circuit and will then continue for a further 6 rounds throughout the season. I hope you'll join me in supporting John and cheering him on the MSV YouTube channel. I've also popped the link to a very small snippet of the Anglesey race that we're talking about on YouTube in the show notes. And I hope you enjoy following this amazing championship if you haven't already plugged into it. As for me, I have been continuing with my sim racing commentary services and getting heavily involved in the organization of a brand new racing league, which is exclusive for VR sim racing on the GT7 platform. I also, as a result of getting involved in that, bought my own VR system, and I've been having a huge amount of fun, and I've even agreed to race in one of the series that we're going to be operating. So do cheer me on if you feel like it, and if you're intrigued about using VR, then do check out my YouTube channel at WebORed5 as always. Furthermore, I have some limited screen real estate available for sponsorship if you want to get your message out or your brand logo or an ad read within my race streams, then do get in touch with me. We can place your logo on screen during races. I have a weekly audience of 4,000 to 5,000 viewers. We have loyal sim racing and motorsport fans in the audience who show up week after week. We've run pretty long, so I won't continue to waffle, but thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please share on socials, and I hope to bring you more intriguing guests and conversations, providing inspiration around the motorsport genre. You can find me at WebORed5 everywhere. That's WEBBORED and the number 5. If you have suggestions for this podcast or for paid commentary, promotional, voiceover, or similar opportunities. Until next time, race fans, this is your checkered flag.